Several areas in the country remain under signal number 2, even as Typhoon Bising begins to decelerate. The number of active COVID-19 cases in the country breached the 200,000 mark after the Health Department reported over 11,000 new cases yesterday. Some LGUs are left with no other choice than to cut short their vaccination drive as vaccine supplies start to run low. Meanwhile, in the United States, unused shots continue to pile up. Malacanang praised Filipinos for coming up with community pantries as a response to the public's clamor for more financial assistance while the pandemic rages on. And Queen Elizabeth II bids her final goodbye to Prince Philip while sitting all alone at the St. George's Chapel. Strict COVID-19 restrictions left Britain's monarchs grieving the prince's death without the comfort of physical touch. Focused and fearless. Here's everything you need to know to jumpstart your day. I'm Riza Diaz. 4 areas remain under signal number 2 as Typhoon Bising reduced its speed. Signal number 2 is up over in Catanduanes, northern Samar, eastern Samar, and Samar. Meanwhile, signal number 1 has been hoisted in the eastern portion of Camarines Norte, Camarines Sur, Albay, Sorsogon, and Masbate, including Burias and Ticao Islands. In Visayas, Biliran, Leyte, southern Leyte, and the northern portion of Cebu, including Bantayan and Camotes Islands, are also under signal number 1. Now, over in Mindanao, signal number 1 is raised over at Dinagat Islands, Surigao del Norte, including Siargao and Bucas Grandes Islands, and the northern portion of Surigao del Sur. Will residents of these areas experience persistent rains for the rest of the day? Let's hear it straight from Pag-asa weather forecaster Ariel Rojas. Sir Ariel, good morning.
Good morning, Riza.
Sir, are we expecting Bising to make landfall? And if so, where? And just how strong will it be?
There's a very slim chance of the Typhoon Bising making its landfall. Both of the sides of Bising are blocked by high-pressure systems, which prevent the typhoon from moving to the west or to the east. So the area of least resistance is presently to the north of the typhoon. So that's the reason why it will make a northward track in the next couple of days. And it is expected to maintain its current intensity of 215 kilometers per hour near its center, and with gusts reaching up to 265 kilometers per hour. The typhoon will maintain its strength today before gradually weakening until this weekend.
Sir Ariel, are there any areas that should conduct mandatory evacuation of its residents?
We have already coordinated with the NDRMC to instruct the local government units if they are not so certain about the amount of rainfall and the landslide that may be experienced in their localities. The reason for that is because we are expecting moderate to heavy rains with at times intense intensity over eastern Visayas and Bicol region. So we have already identified some areas which are very highly susceptible to hazards such as flooding and rain-induced landslides. So in these areas, the LGUs can already enforce a preemptive evacuation.
Sir, again, just to reiterate, there is no chance again for Typhoon Bising to strengthen into a super typhoon anymore?
Well, in the Pag-asa category, Typhoon Bising will not reach the super typhoon intensity because that will mean winds more than 220 kilometers per hour. At the moment, its intensity is at 215 kilometers per hour. It may maintain this intensity in the next 24 hours, and after that, it will gradually weaken.
Sir, when is it expected to leave the Philippine area of responsibility?
It may exit the Philippine area of responsibility by next weekend.
Thank you very much for that update. That's Mr. Ariel Rojas, weather specialist from Pag-asa. Now, the Health Department reports over 200,000 active COVID-19 cases in the country as 11,000 more people got infected with the virus on Saturday. In an interview with One News Now, Octa research member Professor Guido David expressed concerns over the rising number of cases despite decreasing reproduction rates in Metro Manila. With this, David said they have to yet see a reversal of the upward trend in cases.
Right now, we're not seeing a downward trend. And in fact, a few days ago, we reported that 5 cities in NCR were already on a 2-week decline. But now that's not the case, and only 2 cities are on a 2-week decline.
The palace touted Filipino efforts as more and more community pantries are opening up in the country. It all started with one community pantry in Maginhawa Street, Quezon City. An alumna of UP Diliman started the project in response to the so-called lackluster efforts of the government to support the public's basic needs as the pandemic raged on. But in a matter of days, dozens of similar community pantries started popping up in various locations around the country, reaching as far as Naga. The palace lauded these efforts, saying that it, quote, exemplifies Filipino bayanihan spirit. Now, aside from the one in Maginhawa, there are also community pantries in various parts of the metro, Laguna, Bulacan, Rizal, Naga, and Batangas. The Quezon City government has been vaccinating its constituents non-stop since it first acquired vaccines. But the rollout is now hitting a snag as the city starts to run out of the much-needed shots. Ryan Ang has the report.
Is this an issue of distribution?
As of April 16, the Quezon City local government has vaccinated a total of 112,690 persons. Co-chair for vaccine rollout, Joseph Wico, said the vaccination is going smooth and fast.
Well, the target is 45 minutes to an hour, no? We're trying to improve on that. Siyempre, may mga iba dyan nag-stay more than an hour, and meron naman na-achieve namin yung less than 45 minutes.
Wico added that they only entertain those who are pre-registered and scheduled for vaccination.
So we're trying to discourage them from doing that because it will compromise social distancing and it will lengthen their time there kasi masahaba yung proseso.
66-year-old and COVID-19 survivor Asuncion Manabat said she did not have a hard time getting vaccinated due to efficient system. She then encouraged everyone to get vaccinated, especially senior citizens, to be protected against the virus.
Wala akong naramdaman. Wala. Okay, ewan ko sa akin, dapat gawin. Magpa-injection. For your safe. Hindi mo nakikita yung kalaban mo eh. Mabilis kasi nung pagkatapos dun, dito na injection na kagad tapos na. Kaya lang, nung in-injection na ako siguro, tumaas ng konti. Kaya binababa nila. Pero ngayon okay na.
64-year-old Perla Medel and his husband, just like other senior citizens, were given priority during their vaccination in Emilio Aguinaldo Elementary School. It took them only more or less 20 to 25 minutes to get vaccinated.
Hindi na mahirap, hindi masakit. Napakaganda. Hindi magpabakuna talaga sila. Ako nung una nadinig ko, natatakot din ako. Pero nung inano ko ng anak ko, wala na akong takot.
But Huico said that they might not be able to resume vaccination on Sunday and in the coming days as vaccine supplies are running low. They now have to wait for the additional supply of jobs from the national government. In the meantime, they will be conducting inventories for the remaining vaccines for no-shows and give it to bedridden senior citizens via house-to-house vaccination.
Given the limited supply of vaccines that we have in Quezon City, kailangan namin ipagsama-sama yung mga bakuna na yan and see kung ilan yung number na pwede namin ma-come up with to roll out, siguro catering on senior citizens that are bedridden na ibabahay-bahay namin.
For News 5, Ryan Ang, we are One News.
Meanwhile, in the United States, unused COVID-19 vaccines are starting to pile up as many residents still refuse to get inoculated. Now, will these jabs be donated instead? Bloomberg's Daybreak's Michelle Cortez tells us more.
Is this an issue of distribution, or are we seeing people just a little bit hesitant about getting inoculated?
It's really both at this point. We are seeing people in every state who are hesitant. And of course, the distribution of the vaccine is going pretty evenly across states. So we're seeing around cities, for example, there's a lot of demand and it's very difficult to get appointments, even in cities that are doing mass vaccination events. But if you're willing to drive a few hours, you know, an hour, 2, 3 outside of the city, you can generally get to rural towns where they have plenty of vaccine and not enough people who are signing up to get it. So if you're willing to travel within your state or across state lines, vaccines are available, just maybe not close to where you live.
So when it comes to the latest on where we're seeing, some of these nations banning or just refusing to use, how closer are we to seeing these, unused stockpiles being donated to countries that, do need it? And does the psychology of developed countries not wanting to use these vaccines play in there as well when it comes to hesitancy and rollouts?
We are seeing millions of vaccines starting to build up in the United States. Of course, we have a stockpile of the AstraZeneca vaccine. It's not approved yet here, and the J&J vaccine is currently on pause exactly because of what you're discussing, these clots that we're seeing. Many developing countries are still rolling out their vaccines. They're saying that they will take the AstraZeneca and the Johnson & Johnson shots, that the risk of these clots is so low compared to the very high, serious, and deadly COVID infections that they're experiencing that they do want to get access, and they feel like they can control who gets the vaccine to reduce the risk of the clotting. As far as when the U.S. is going to start making those available to other people, or indeed even move them around within states or between states, it's unclear how we're going to get to that point. That's a supply chain issue. It's an organizational issue, and we haven't seen an awful lot of great movement when it comes to that particular space. When you think about it broadly, though, very soon we're going to have many, many more vaccines than we have people who want them. Hopefully that means it'll trickle down and people in other areas will have access to these shots.
Michelle, before we let you go, we're seeing some odd trends globally. Brazil's COVID pandemic right now more deadly than, say, India. Do we have any idea why the case fatality ratio in Brazil is twice that of India?
It is very unusual what is happening across different parts of the world when it comes to the COVID epidemic. And honestly, scientists don't know exactly what's going on here. There are, of course, a couple of issues. The outbreak right now that's happening in Brazil is so intense that they're overwhelming their hospitals. So when you can't get good care in a hospital, even if they know what to do for you, if you can't get access to it, you're more likely to die. Of course, also in Brazil, they're experiencing an outbreak fueled by this P1 variant. It could be that the type of vaccine or the type of virus that they're experiencing is a more deadly virus, and that could be contributing to those numbers. Finally, there are genetic differences among people, and it could be that people from Southeast Asia, people from India, perhaps are just genetically less vulnerable to COVID death. That's something that the researchers are going to have to dig into much more deeply in the days and months to come.
Now, in other news, Queen Elizabeth bid farewell to her late husband, Prince Philip, while sitting all alone during Saturday's funeral service. The intimate service at St. George's Chapel in Windsor Castle was attended by 30 people, including members of the royal family. In compliance with the UK's strict COVID-19 protocols, the Queen could not take comfort in the physical touch of family as she said goodbye to her partner for 73 years. Dressed in black and wearing a mask, the Queen stood alone with her head bowed as her husband was lowered into the royal vault. In 1997, Queen Elizabeth described Prince Philip as her strength and stay over their decades of marriage. Philip's dedication to his duty earned him widespread popularity in Britain, but the monarch was also criticized due to a number of controversial racist comments he made throughout his life. And that's how the day is shaping up to be. Join us later at 10 in the morning as we monitor the day's biggest stories from sunrise to sundown. You can also catch One News on Signal Play. Register for a free account now at www.signalplay.com and stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Riza Diaz. Mask on, wash hands and stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.